Vincent, it's a great delight to have this conversation with you. We've met any number of occasions, quite often through the Woolman, but on other occasions too. And the Woolman itself is a good starting point because it indicates that you have associations with the London livery for quite some while.
That's right. The Woolman was actually my second livery company. My mother company, my first livery, is the Solicitors Livery Company. I joined the solicitors nearly 20 years ago. Then subsequently, one of my friends said, well, you know, you really should think about joining a proper livery company. And he was a liveryman of the Woolman. So that sort of set me on the path to becoming a Woolman as well as a solicitor.
Yeah, and they do go back a jolly long way, the Woolman, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
Longer than just about anybody, I think. There might be one company with which goes back further in the records, at least.
Yes, and of course also you're linked with the city through the livery and all the rest of it. All of those things have led to you being a sheriff. And I gather that also there's a very good possibility that you will be the Lord Mayor as from the end of 2021. Is that have I got that right?
That's right. That's right. To be Lord Mayor, one has to be an alderman who has served as sheriff. So I've ticked 2 of the boxes. I now have to be elected as Lord Mayor this coming September. But I have the support of the Court of Aldermen in that election. And we look at these things about 18 months ahead of time and decide which of us goes forward with the support of the Court of Aldermen for election as Lord Mayor. That doesn't mean it's absolutely guaranteed, but it means that I can at least get ahead with the necessary planning and preparation, which is very extensive. It's not the sort of job that you can simply drop into on a month or 2 months notice. It requires a very serious amount of time in terms of planning and preparation. If nothing else, and it's 100% commitment for the year, so it takes you out of whatever job or profession you hold for that year, and that itself has to be planned for.
Yeah. Yes. Well, anyway, I'm going to be talking to you on the assumption that that the committee will be as good as their word as in the past, and we can then talk about your time as Lord Mayor, I think.
I hope that the livery will do the, and of course it will be great. I really do hope that on the 29th of September, the day of the election next year, Wednesday the 29th of September 2021, that we'll get a great turnout of stationers.
We'll drum them all up. We'll drum them all up. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, but let's go back rather a long way now. First of all, quite a long way. Anyway, I don't want to make you seem older than you are, but you began life in Dublin, the marvellous capital of Ireland, and you were then educated at St Michael's College and then University College Dublin, and then after that Trinity too.
That's right. That's right. I was a product of St Michael's is a school run by the Holy Ghost Fathers, the Spiritans, as they're now prefer to be known. I consider myself very lucky. It's a missionary order, a Catholic missionary order, but there was a number of younger priests, all of whom had been kicked out of Nigeria because they were on the wrong side of the civil war in the late 1960s, and they returned to Ireland, and most of them were fantastic. Fantastic and priests, and they were great teachers. I was very lucky at the time.
Yeah.
It was also a rugby school. I mean, it was. It's become a real powerhouse of rugby. A lot of the current Leinster and team, for instance, came through St Michael's. It wasn't as much of a rugby powerhouse in my day there, I have to say. That's a much more recent development.
I won't press you then on your rugby prowess.
Please don't, Master.
But then you went on to the Irish bar. Now tell me, is in Ireland, is it common law or is it Roman law as in Scotland?
It's very much a common law system. I mean, the Irish and English law is very, very similar. English cases are cited in the Irish courts every on a daily basis. There's been perhaps a little bit of a divergence there is a divergence in one area, which is the constitutional law area, which of course, where you have a written constitution, which is developed by an active Supreme Court. That has in that one respect, Ireland has moved away from the British, the English legal model, but in every other way, it is the Irish and English law are so close. It's very hard at times to tell them apart. Yes, I decided initially my career plans were to practice at the Irish bar as a commercial barrister. I was interested in that side of the bar, but I decided I would get I always wanted to spend a year or two in the city. Perhaps the excitement around Big Bang and all of that sort of thing happening in the 1980s. I wanted to spend a little bit of time getting a bit of commercial law experience in the city. Hence the move to London in early 1989, just after I had finished my master's at Trinity College.
So actually, you probably in fact, you would have spent more of your life in London now than in Dublin.
That's true.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah. And then, so once you'd completed that training and so on, you then moved in the direction of corporate law. Now, can you do say a little bit about that? Of course, I heard you talk about it before and so on, but I think for a lot of people who aren't lawyers, understanding what corporate lawyers do is not necessarily clear. Can you give us some?
Yes, there's a whole range of things, but I mean, my practice, I act for large companies, financial institutions, large and small. Many of them are not UK companies. A lot of my clients over the years have been European, particularly Southern European banks and companies. I've done a lot of work in Spain and Portugal in particular, and my practice involves where they are looking to raise money on the international markets in one form or another. So we're here in London helping a Portuguese bank which is raising money on the international markets, and they'll do that under English law contracts which we put together for them here in London. That might involve, for instance, the bank issuing a bond, and that bond might be listed here in London, it might be listed in Luxembourg or in Dublin or somewhere like that, but it will all be under English law, and that's of course one of the great selling points we have here in the city, that we've got all of these skills that people want us to deploy on their behalf.
So it's a pretty specialist sort of branch of law, isn't it?
Well, it is in some respects, but many of the fundamentals are basic contract law that apply whether you're buying or selling a house or a company, or a lot of the same basic law runs through what I do and what a conveyancing solicitor who looks after your property sale does as well. So much of the same basic concepts. But you're right, it's a specialist area. It requires a lot of specialist knowledge. It also requires, one of the things I spend a lot of time very often doing is working with non-English lawyers. A lot of the transactions I do will involve significant legal input from whichever country the company is operating in. So a lot of the time I spend is working through legal issues, the cross-border legal issues that arise, which is the sort of the intellectually challenging piece of the work very often. Some of these issues can be quite complex to resolve at times, but I'm not saying me, but certainly it's one of the things that city lawyers are good at doing, working through these sorts of issues, working with other legal systems, ultimately to deliver a result for our clients.
That's very interesting. Another, of course, as well as your work there, and also your links with delivery companies, to arrive at the stage you have in terms of the Lord Mayoralty. Did that start off by having to be elected as a common councillor? Not
in my case, but it very often does.
Right.
There's no set route to it. Some of my aldermanic colleagues, as I said, to be Lord Mayor, you have to be an alderman to start with. Some of the aldermen start by getting themselves elected as common councillors, and then go on to be elected as aldermen. I dropped straight in as an alderman, but that was, as it happened, a coincidence in that I knew there was an aldermanic vacancy coming up in the ward in which I was looking to stand. The councillors in the ward were very keen for me to stand with them at the time, as there was an election for common council. But I knew there was going to be an aldermanic vacancy later that year, and I didn't fancy. Actually, I have to say, it sounds very arrogant, but I didn't fancy fighting 2 elections in the space of 6 months. Dry powder dry, and go for the aldermanic vacancy, which was what I really wanted to do in the first place. And
Okay.
thankfully it worked out. I won a contested election, and that was just the first step on the road. All being well, will take me to Mansion House next year.
Yes, I see. So in other words, either way, whether it's for the Common Council or as an alderman, there's an election, or at least theoretically there's an election, assuming there's another person putting up. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I see. And then you've been on quite a few committees of the city, as I gather. And one of them I noticed is the rough sleeping.
I must have done something. I must have done something terribly awful in a past life, or something like that.
Well, I expect we've all death by committees in whatever walk of life we are. But you're on the rough sleeping committee, is that right?
That's right. It was a committee set up a couple of years ago it's a subcommittee actually of one of the major committees, Children's and Community Services. But it was very clear a couple of years ago that we needed to set up a subcommittee specifically to address the issue of homelessness and rough sleeping in the city, which was becoming a significant issue at that time. It was a significant issue, and to an extent it remains a significant issue, although things have changed radically over the last 7 or 8 months with the provision being made for rough sleepers through the pandemic.
Yes, and because that's something that could be one of the benefits, I suppose, of what otherwise has been a pretty grim experience to most people. Well, we've
actually done one wonderful thing. Only around the corner from Stationers' Hall, in Carter Lane, the youth hostel in Carter Lane, which you might know from sort of walking around the area. The city took a lease of that back in June, and it recently extended that now through till next March. And we've used that to take some of the most entrenched rough sleepers, some of the rough sleepers that have simply that have been completely resistant to coming off the streets over the years. Many of these have been sleeping 7, 8, 10 years plus on the streets. But we've got most of them into the youth hostel in Carter Lane, and we're working very intensively with them to try and break the rough sleeping habit. So that's been a fantastic piece of work done by the city corporation over the period of the pandemic. But it's been hard work. It's been very hard work, because some of these are rough sleepers who simply don't want to come off the streets because it's their life.
Absolutely, but that's very good news. Now you're also on the committee, or have been on the committee, of the John Soane Museum. Not everyone will know about the John Soane Museum. Would you briefly like to give us an idea of what sort of the focus there is?
It's a fascinating house museum. So it was the home of Sir John Soane, the Regency architect. He was active through the sort of 1790s through to his death in the mid 1830s. When he died, he created in 3 houses in Lincoln's Inn Fields. He created what effectively was an academy, as well as a home. It was an academy for architects, architectural students. He based his practice there, and architectural students came to quite literally learn at his feet in his home, which is full of treasures from around Europe. A lot of antiquities. There's original and indeed casts of antiquities. It's meant to inspire creativity. You wander around these extraordinary interlinked houses. You're inside the mind of Sir John Soane, one of the greatest architects that England has ever produced. You see the workings of his mind as you wander around the house. It's been pretty much left in the state that it was. The collection is very much intact. It is as it was when Sir John died in the 1830s.
So what people I think often forget is that the kernel, although it's been obscured by Sir Herbert Baker's rather more boring and bland architecture in the 1920s, the kernel of the Bank of England is John Soane's work, of course. Now, another interesting thing is I've actually been a guest of this particular group on one occasion, but not everyone will have come across it. tell us about the Pickwick Club of London.
It happens to be meeting later today. It's a wonderful club of devotees of the Pickwick papers, and indeed Dickens generally, which meets 4 or 5 times perhaps a year. In ordinary times, in ordinary circumstances, it meets at the George and Vulture in just off Cornhill, and that is actually which in fact is what was one of Dickens' favourite watering holes. He ate and drank there regularly, and it features in the Pickwick papers as the home of the club. And so the City Pickwick Club has the great good fortune of continuing to meet and dine in the George and Vulture, which features in the Pickwick papers themselves. And we all have all the members of the club on joining the club. You're given given one of the characters' names from the book. I enjoy the name Bob Sawyer. That's my quick club name. And Bob Sawyer, in fact, is quite a significant character at various points in the Pickwick papers, although at times a bit of a ne'er-do-well. But it's a good. I think I'm rather pleased with a character like Bob Sawyer.
Yes, it's good fun. I came along once to a gathering in the George and the Vulture. Yes, better
than the late Lord Mayor Sir Peter Estland's club name. He is Lord Muttonhead. I won't. I think perhaps we should move on from.
I think we probably have to move on quite swiftly. But that's brought us back to the Lord Mayoral thing. And when I was a boy at Stationers' Company School, hence my link with the company. Also, I was a publisher too. But when I was at school there, a chap called Sir Dennis Truscott was the master of the company. He was also, or had also been Lord Mayor. It may have been the same year, I can't remember. But this was a great honour, and we've had 2 or 3 occasions when that's been the case. We hope we'll have another one quite soon, and at least another Lord Mayor, as it were. And we were all given a half-day holiday. So Stationers Crown Woods Academy will be looking out very carefully to see whether the Lord Mayor next year, assuming you're elected, will be doing them a favour of the same sort.
There's an idea, and I'll have to broach that one very, very gently with the head and see what the thinking is. But it's a nice idea. But it would be great if, one of the things I hope is that maybe we might look at getting the Academy involved in the Lord Mayor's show. That would be a wonderful way to involve the company, and indeed the new school the company is associated with very directly at the beginning of the mayoralty. It would be fantastic if there was a presence of if the Academy had a presence in the show. That
would be brilliant, Vincent. Yeah. And the Lord Mayoralty has great sort of romance attached to it, because I can remember as a lad born right on the edge of North London that my mother had been brought up further in, and I was always being regaled with the stories of Whittington and the cat, and turn again, Whittington. Just as we finish this conversation, tell us what particular hope you would have, assuming you're elected, what particular thing would you have, hope you'd have come out of your year as Lord Mayor?
One of the things, there's a number of aspects to that. And I'll just touch on 2 very briefly. One is, of course, we will be in the let's hope we're in the post-pandemic period, or at least in the recovery period. And there is an enormous job of work to be done around that. I'm here in the city today in the office. The city is extraordinarily quiet, and there's going to be a real, it's a real battle ahead of us. It's a very winnable battle, but it's going to be a real battle to get the financial professional services sector back up and running here in the city again. But it's certainly one as the principal. The Lord Mayor is one of the principal ambassadors for the financial professional services sector in the UK. That's one of the challenges I'm looking forward to getting my teeth into.
And what's the other one?
The other is around the theme, and my theme is people with purpose. That's develop the mayoral theme. A lot more to come on that, but one of the particular strands of the theme of people with purpose is going to be around social mobility, and a specific piece of work which is already starting around progression in professions and in the financial services industry, and looking at why there isn't yet as much progression, in social mobility terms, at least in the professional and financial services. And I hope at the end of the year to have made some real progress in that area. So those are, I suppose, two of the key things that we'll be working on, both in the run-up to the mayoral year and then looking to deliver on as Lord Mayor, subject to election, of course.
They both sound excellent. I think people with a purpose is something that all stationers would sign up to. And we look forward to getting as many of our number along there to vote for the election in September. Vincent, thank you so much for giving time at this very busy moment for you.
Not at all, Master. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure having a chat. Good to see you.